Entrepreneurship is not just real estate. You don't have to just focus on that. There are other ways to make money as well. There's so many other ways, and coming here to the US open up a whole bunch of opportunities to me.
Welcome to Trial to Triumph, hosted by Caleb Johnson, the show about leaning into life's constant testing on your way to realizing your biggest blessings.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Caleb Johnson, host of From Trial to Triumph. This is the show where I speak with people who have gone through tremendous trials and they have come out triumphant. And today I am very excited about our guest. He has a really interesting story, and I kind of want him to kind of pick that apart. So, John, just want to say welcome, man. How are you?
Pretty good, Caleb. Thanks for having me, and I'm very humbled to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here and just share your story with our listeners. So can you just give them a quick backstory about maybe where you started, where you grew up, and kind of where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in the Philippines. Even though my parents didn't force me to take one career over the other, you're expected to be either a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. I don't like reading contracts. I don't like hospital, and I'm good at math. So I took engineering. My first job, I was an apprentice for one of the biggest manufacturers in the world. And I'm telling this story because I appreciate the opportunity that I have in front of me, because my salary back then was $5 a day. It's $5 a day. And this money was $3 of that already. Right. So I really appreciate what I have now. So I did that. I moved to the U.S. early 2000s. I started as a blue collar, with a blue collar job because I couldn't find an engineering position. Luckily, eventually, an oil and gas company, gave me the opportunity to do that. Stayed in oil and gas for quite a bit. I was the 5-star engineer, ideal employee. I was making a lot of impact in the company, and then I got promoted maybe a little too early now that I look back at it. I was solving a lot of big issues, and the only way I know how to do it is to work harder. And by working harder, meaning I'm putting more time. And I got so burned out. I wasn't, performing at my peak. And there was one point that I made an error. I was suspended and eventually demoted. All right. So, and I was, it was a tough time. You came from, an ideal employee, really good, doing a lot of good things to the company, to this person. So, and Caleb, I was too busy to realize that I'm not a pleasant person to be with at that time. I was having issues with, marriage. It was tough. I wasn't a pleasure to be with. But I didn't realize that because I was too busy working. And as I mentioned to you earlier, God has, his ways of showing you things that you tend to neglect on a daily basis. And for me, it was one night when my cousin was sitting on my lap, and my cousin was just tapping the keyboard on the computer, and then my cousin accidentally turned on the webcam and recorded my face for a few seconds. I realized that. I snapped out of it, and I watched the video. And what I saw was I didn't recognize who I saw. It was my face, but it was a face of a man that looked defeated, who's given up, who doesn't want to do anything else. And at that point, it was painful. I realized how painful that was, how much pain it was inflicting on me and to the people that I love. So I decided from that point I needed to change. So from engineering, I looked for another job, and the way I did that was I did my MBA so I can find out what I really wanted to do, because I had no clue what I wanted to do. You know how people go to MBA to focus on something? I went there to figure out what I really wanted to do. One thing, so supply chain, I tried that, marketing, everything. What appealed to me was investment management, right? Trading stocks. And I like it. I like the challenge of it. I like the impact that I can make to investors or my clients, and I like the earning potential of that as well. Through the university, I was given the opportunity to run a portfolio of stocks for investors, and this is real investors' money. We were in the 8 digits back then, so it was a pretty good chunk of money. Then we had to analyze the stock, and the way we analyze it is we look at, say, a 10-year cash flow, look at a stock's value, get the price, compare it to the current price, and see if it's at a discount, lower than the current price, to decide whether we buy, sell, or hold the stock. So I would spend hours, maybe 15 hours, sometimes days, analyzing a stock, looking through financial statements. And then here comes what's interesting there is every time a stock moves by plus or minus 5%, we have to do extensive research, find out what happened with the company. And then there were several times when I had to send an email with nothing on it, and just because I couldn't find anything about what happened, why it moved. And the only reason why was there was a tweet or there was a social media post that influenced the stock price. And that's when I realized that the stock market is controlled by a handful of people. And these people have power, control, and money. Right. Additionally, the stock market is who are those? So a leader of a nation, tech billionaires, or Fed chair, right? So those are the three ones that typically influence the markets. Also, global factors also affect the stock markets. Global factors that I don't control. So as an engineer, I was very proof-based or evidence-based, and I don't have the confidence to pitch an investment to an investor if I don't have any control of the stock, right? It for me was, sorry to say it, but it was speculative, and it was emotional. It was driven by fear and greed. I wasn't comfortable doing that. So I was ending up my MBA. I still didn't know what to do, and I took entrepreneurship classes in my very last semester, and this saved me because I was given the opportunity to coach for entrepreneurs who are under-resourced. And when I say under-resourced, they don't have the education or don't have the money, don't have the training, and you help them build a business plan and grow the business. And I thought that I needed an MBA to start my own business. And here are my entrepreneurs who didn't even finish high school, and they are crafting their life, right? They're crafting the impact that they want to do, leave this world. So I was so inspired by that experience. The very next day, I decided to start our own business and created this plan. And this plan requires building my cash flow to replace my W-2 income, and then building my wealth through real estate, right? And that business, that was a 2 to 3 year plan for me. So this cash flow portion is, it has to be passive income, right? Or no more than 4 hours to 8 hours a week. And what drove this plan was the book called 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. For a lot of people, it's Rich Dad Poor Dad. Yeah, the 4 Hour Workweek was the book that started it all for me. So the idea is to build my cash flow through passive income. And what I did there was Amazon. So we designed, sold products on Amazon. Okay, so that was the cash flow part. And I can tell you that I found 121 different ways that it won't work. And what I mean by that number is I looked at 121 different products before we made our first profit.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
It was tough. I can tell you that.
How long did that take, that 121-day process? Or that 120-day?
Yeah, so that evaluating 121 products took us about a year.
Wow. Okay.
But our cash depleted much quicker than a year. And so we launched our first product, and this is what happened. We launched our first product. my wife put money in, I put money in. We launched our first product on Amazon. It was a pet product, and we were losing money every month. So I over designed this product that no one wanted. We were losing every month to the point that I only had $2,800 in my bank account, and I kept on questioning myself, what am I doing? Right? I'm not. This is not working out. But it is aligned with what I want to do. It's aligned with my goals, and I like the impact that I'm making to my customers. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give it one more shot. I looked around, said I can sell some stuff and inject capital to my business. And one of the things that I sold was my beloved car. That was my first ever dream car. I took it to the racetrack, 1 weekend a month. That was my hobby car, and I plan to keep that for the rest of my life. So I made a painful decision to sell that car, May 2020. And with that money, we launched 2 new product lines, and that 2 new product lines we still have. Luckily, didn't fail this time, knock on wood. And that was able to provide us the cash flow to cover our expenses on a monthly basis.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jon, I want to, that's an amazing story. And there's so many nuggets that I want to pull out for our listeners.
Yeah.
And since you just talked about selling all your belongings, what did selling your car and a majority of your possessions actually do for you, for your mentality?
It cleared up a lot of things.
Okay.
I realized that I was spending too much time, and sometimes to some extent too much money as well, on something that doesn't add a lot of value. It was getting excessive, that I wasn't benefiting from it anymore. And clearing myself from those belongings, or I see it as a decluttering of who I was. And I realized that after selling the car, it wasn't, I was fine. It was painful for a bit, but after a week or so, it was fine, because I'm building my future, and maybe someday I'll get that car again. But it was actually liberating to some extent. So
I hear that sometimes from people, that once they go all in and they sell their belongings, like you said, it did declutter you, and you were maybe funding that car a little bit more than you needed to, because that's your hobby car, right?
Yeah.
Did that kind of make you go all in and say, look, I've kind of burned my bridges, I've done this, and did that actually, so I'm assuming that catapulted your business because of that?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. So launching our e-commerce business, that was plan A. Now, if I got to a point where I said, you know what, I got to start working on my plan B now. If I have that mentality, then the probability of plan A working goes to almost zero, right? So I wasn't willing to do that. And I was so down at that point. It's like I feel like I hit the bottom. I'm like, the only other way is up, and luckily it worked out. I was, I worked harder, I stayed up later. But that extra effort that I put in was actually different compared to working with in a W-2 job. I worked so many hours there, but I actually feel more energized at the end of the day, because I know that I did something for myself, something for our future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whenever you burn your bridges, what that does for your mindset is say, I'm going to go all in, and this has to work. And people might say, well, what if you fail? What if you do this? What if you do that? Then you go get a job.
Yeah. Drive an Uber or something. Deliver.
Yeah. And if a lot of people ask themselves that question and say, what's the worst thing that happens? You go back to your old boss, and say, hey, I want my job back.
Yeah.
They're probably going to give that job back to you, right? And you think, well, if that's the worst case scenario, then it becomes a lot easier to move forward.
Yeah, and sometimes the scenario that we play in our minds are much worse than what's the reality, right? And yeah, and I still have good relationships with my coworkers and my boss. We actually had dinner last week. And before I left, they said, "Hey, if you want to come back, our door's open." So, and that's how I didn't burn the bridge at that point. That's all always there. But like you said, you got to go all in to make this thing work. So, and what we did. So,
And when you first started talking to us about the Philippines and
yeah,
that first apprenticeship of earning $5 a day, I mean, that's incredible thinking about that, because I live in Arizona, Phoenix, Scottsdale, and so you see these people in $5 a day. I mean, we think we need so much to survive, and coming from another country that's not the U.S., being in the U.S., we're incredibly blessed.
yeah.
But I want to ask you, what did that do for you in your kind of work ethic when you were only making that much money?
When you're living there, and earning that much, it was still low, even though I lived in the Philippines. It wasn't enough to provide for a full family, right? So what that brought out in me was my entrepreneurship side. So I always had that an entrepreneurship side that I never pursued when I was young. Um, I sold ice pops in the neighborhood. I sold toys in school. And during this time, when I was, working for this auto manufacturer, I started a video editing business because I needed money to go out with my friends, and I didn't have much left, right? So I started a video editing business. I put up a sign, and then our neighbors would come up and have me do their video edits, and that kind of worked out. You just have to be creative and find ways to hustle and make money, and that's something that I carry through this day. I mean, it's not when you say entrepreneurship, is not just real estate. You don't have to just focus on that. There are other ways to make money as well. There's so many other ways, and coming here to the US open up a whole bunch of opportunities to me. So I'm very appreciative of the opportunities that are in front of me right now. So
And one thing that it sounds like that did for you was finding a way how to do it, and understanding that coming from maybe not so much, and you had to get creative. If you
yeah,
wanted to go to the movies, you had to edit some videos or whatever that looked like,
yeah,
and that, I'm sure that kind of built up a work ethic in you. And if our listeners kind of understand one thing from that story, is you might need to get uncomfortable to get where you want to go, right?
yeah,
If you want to go to the movies, or bigger scale, if you want to buy that house, if you want to provide for your family the way that they deserve or the way that you think they should,
yeah,
you might need to get uncomfortable and go through some things that you don't want to do. But
yeah,
ultimately, John, like what that did for you was understand that, at such a young age and having to do that now, that's just how you live, right? And that's just normal, and sounds like a great blessing.
yeah, absolutely. And growth happens outside your comfort zone, right? So nothing good or no growth happens in your comfort zone. You only grow when you go outside your comfort zone. And I always tell people that I had to recreate myself every few years and pursue new and sometimes uncomfortable things in order to get what I really want. I am uh, if you look at an introvert extrovert scale, and we did this in like with 50 people, and I was on the leftmost chart of the introvert scale.
Really?
Right.
Oh, I
Yeah,
wouldn't expect that.
absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that
So,
at all.
yeah. And, I had to get over that. I have to program in my mind that, hey, you know what? I can change. I can change this. It's not set in stone. So our minds are can change and are flexible and can learn and grow and adapt. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And, on that note, I've heard some people, they might have a process for doing uncomfortable things, and it sounds like every 2 to 3 years you kind of reanalyze your life.
Mhm.
So do you have a certain process to analyze your life, where you are, and kind of see, I need to do more uncomfortable things, or do you have a process for something like that?
Yes. After my MBA, when I said I've had enough, I need to change. Right. I created a plan. It's called Boxes to Buildings. And the reason why I named that is, remember, our first business is Amazon. So that's the boxes, that's the cash flow part. And buildings is what we're doing now is multifamily, investing in multifamily assets, and that creates our wealth. So from boxes to buildings, so Amazon to real estate. So that's the name of my plan. And I created this easy to remember code. You know how entrepreneurs, we say we work all day, all night, and then we repeat it again the next day. So AM is working all day, PM is working all night, and then repeat. So AM stands for set what you want to achieve, right? Set your goals, and then M is measure where you are now, meaning let's take a look at your personal financial statement or take a look at your current expenses, right? And your cash flow. And then after you set your achievements, you measure where you are now, you plan what is it or how are you going to execute this, right? So for me, it was building my cash flow, which is Amazon, and then eventually moving to real estate. After you make that plan, here you have to take massive action. Take note. I could have said take action, but no, I said you have to take massive action, right? So that's your AM, PM, take massive action to execute that plan. And then every quarter, this is what I do. I repeat the entire process. So I go through what do I want to achieve? I measure where I am, and then I look at my plan. I take massive action again, and then I repeat it every quarter. So AM, PM, repeat. So that was my process that I keep on doing, and I apply it to my Amazon business. I apply it to my to our real estate business. So
Wow, that's so creative, man. I
yeah,
love that. Just
yeah,
just so our listeners pick that up. So
yeah.
A is analyzing your goals. Is that right?
Setting your achievement. Yeah,
Setting achievement.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
And then M is
Want
measuring
achieve.
where you are, right?
Yep,
P is plan, and so plan on how you're going to get there.
and then M is massive action.
Mm-hmm. And then repeat.
Repeat. Yeah, AM,
Oh,
PM, repeat.
wow, I love that, man. That's again so creative, and sometimes you just need a little fun
Yeah,
because people, everyone's talking about goals, and
yeah,
especially you think of like New Year's resolutions,
yeah,
it just gets mundane.
yeah,
And
yeah,
thinking AM to PM and repeat, that's just kind of like a cute little saying that you say AM, PM, repeat, and you
yeah,
almost, I want to do that,
yeah,
right? It's like
yeah,
fun.
yeah, exactly. And we always hear about SMART goals, and everyone knows that. But if you're starting a company or you don't even know what you're aiming for, how are you going to set SMART goals, right? So this is like pre-SMART goals, right? You got to set what, like, ultimately what you want to achieve, which is probably a big, broad goal, right? And then you just follow the process, and you have to. The key here is you have to constantly review where you are, right? And that's the engineer in me that requires me to go back and look at where I am, take a snapshot, and then execute again. So
Mm, I love that.
yeah,
And I wanted to talk a little bit about that turning point for your life,
yeah,
where you say you were burnt out from corporate America,
hmm,
and seeing, like you said, that was kind of stressful on your family, your wife, just looking like that. That really, seeing yourself shocked you, and I'm curious, when you told your wife that whenever your wife or your family, and when you told them that you didn't want to be an engineer anymore,
Hmm.
what was their reaction to that?
My wife said, "Go for it." She is super supportive. I've, I'm so lucky to have her as my wife. She was very supportive of it. She still is, and sometimes, obviously you have fears and you have doubts. We're all human, and she keeps me grounded. She keeps me, she keeps pushing me to be better, and because of her, I keep on pushing. I want to keep on growing because we want to build a good future for us and for our families.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did she kind of and I'm just curious, did she kind of recognize that you were in this state and that things just weren't going well, and that you actually seeing that you wanted to make a change, that might help things get better?
Yeah, great question. Sometimes I ask myself why she stuck with me during that time, but she did. She saw who I was becoming, and she knew who I can become. Right? She knew what I can do. So it was deep down, and she had to. She was my. I mean, literally, she was my strength. She was my rock. She kept me sane. Sometimes when emotions are high, right, your IQ goes down. Right? Kept me thinking rationally. She asked questions that I never realized. Sometimes those were pretty painful questions, but it was all to keep pushing me to achieve what we want to do, what I want to achieve. So
Mm.
yeah,
Wow, that's good, man. Thanks for sharing that.
yeah,
When, sometimes I, I think it's such a blessing to have someone in your life that's they can tell you they can answer the hard questions.
yeah,
And, for you, John, you have to be in a position and be mature enough to accept that and actually turn and change. And I'm thinking about our listeners, if they maybe have a hard time doing what needs to be done or accepting those hard answers. How can someone maybe have a mind shift change to start accepting those hard things?
That's a great question. I realized that you have to learn when to give up and when to rest up, right? If what you're doing is something that doesn't align with your values and goals or affecting your relationship with people, um, you might have to think twice about doing that. Because, as humans grow older, we acquire more skills, more knowledge, and we have less time. What I'm saying is, as we get older, our opportunity cost becomes higher, right? As we grow older, our opportunity cost becomes higher because we get more skillful and we have less time and we have more responsibilities. So by holding on to something that is not aligned with what you want to do, you may have to go of things that actually align with what you want to do, right? You might have to let go of the things that you really want to do. So you have to be courageous to jump in. And as I mentioned earlier, we play the worst scenarios as humans. We play the worst scenarios in our head. And oftentimes it's actually not that bad, right? So you got to learn when to give up and when to rest up. In my case, Amazon, right, our first business where we almost got, we almost had to shut it down. I liked what I was bringing to my customers, the value, and I know there's a huge potential upside in that. So I rested up. I didn't give it up. I rested up. I took a break. I asked for help, and then I recalibrated my plan, and then I went after it again. So know when to give up and when to rest up, and be courageous to give up the things that don't align with your values.
Man, I've never heard it put like that before, and
Yeah.
I love that. So understanding, it sounds like taking risk is a big part of that, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to take risks, and a lot of people that can terrify people.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your answer is, but how does someone start taking risks if they typically aren't someone that wants or someone that usually does that?
Yeah. For me, I had to create a plan. There has to be a plan, because you reduce your chances of failing significantly if you have a plan that you constantly review. If you just say, hey, you know what, I'm done with my corporate job, I'm gonna go and look for start my own business tomorrow, right? You don't have a foundation yet, right? For me, it took 2 years before I can leave my W-2 job. Our Amazon income had to be at 80% of my W-2 income. That was the threshold. That was the milestone before I could even say, hey, you know what? This other 20%, I'm going to cut, Netflix. I'm going to start cooking, which I haven't, cooked yet still, but cut those expenses. Once you get to that point, and then you jump. You have to create it. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to plan it over several years. That's what happened to me. So when people talk about, risk and taking like a quick change or pivot, you have to carefully plan that. You have to carefully plan your exit, right? And that's what I did.
Yeah, I think so. I've met people that making a plan is really what they need, and I think I am like that. If I could plan all day, and I love that, and then you just take action, right? Some people, and this is all about knowing yourself.
Sure.
They need to just take a leap of faith, and sometimes they build their parachute on the way down.
Yeah.
And if you live life long enough, I mean, you should know that about yourself fairly soon. If you need a plan, or if you need to actually just take action, and what that actually means for you. But
right.
I think it starts with getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, and making that decision.
Yeah, at some point you gotta say enough is enough, and this is too painful, and I'm losing so much, by sticking with this in this path.
Yeah. Jon, brother, I've really appreciated talking to you.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm surprised we haven't known each other longer, because you and I think a lot alike. Yeah. And again, it's amazing that you're on an introvert scale, because I would think that you're not. Maybe that. Right in the middle, but talk very well, and it's very impressive.
So after this conversation, I'm gonna curl up there in the corner.
Gotcha, man. Well, Jon, I'll ask you our final 3 questions, and the first one being, if you can recommend a book to our listeners, what would that be?
So since we're on the topic of one more, I'm gonna give 2. So one is a classic, Think and Grow Rich, and I hear this from many people. Every time they read the book again, you feel like you're reading a new version of it, but it's actually the same one, but the person reading it, which is you, it's a new version of yourself, and that's you're interpreting or understanding concepts way differently than the first time you read it, because you continue to grow and evolve. That book is amazing. It basically says that your mind is just the single most important factor of what can stop you and what can propel you to the best version of yourself. Right? So Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And the other one is, since real estate is a relationship business, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I still take a lot of those concepts that he teaches in that book. And one of them is like, when you're talking to someone, mention their name, right? Because the one word that people always want to hear are their names, right? So mention their names. And you can build strong relationships through that.
Man, those are 2 of I feel like the Bible books of, personal development, talking to people. Those are great books.
Yeah.
if people want to learn more about you and what you do,
Yeah.
where's the best place for them to do that at?
You can look us up. Our website is www.dlrx.us, and that is an acronym for our last name. DLR is De Los Reyes. It is also short for the word dollar, and X is multiply. So dollar X, or we multiply our investors' money through investing in real estate. So dlrx.us is our website. You can also look me up in LinkedIn, Jon, Jon, and then De Los Reyes. So
Awesome. And if you can just share one last thing with our listeners to really take away from today's show, what would that be?
So I have a simple advice, which is thank and appreciate people a lot more. A person rarely gets to their goal on their own, right? Along the journey, you meet a lot of people that have made significant impact in your lives. For us, it's our suppliers who continue to put out quality products, or the family friend that introduced us to multifamily investing, or our lead sponsors that invited us to acquire our first 2 properties, right? And when you say thank you, don't just say thank you, good job, or say thank you and have something specific after that. So this morning, I texted our business partner, hey, thanks for finishing this. I know you're so tired, but you stayed up till midnight to finish still a quality job, so I appreciate that. Last week, I texted one of my old bosses, say, hey, you know what? A lot of the skills that I use in our business now is something that I learned while working for you. So I really thank you for that. So say thank you and say something specific after that. And these are people that in your lives are blessings. I see them as blessings, and blessings are meant to be appreciated, and blessings are meant to be shared. So,
Man, that I want to say that comes straight from How to Win Friends and Influence People, like complimenting people, but giving a sincere compliment, not flattery, because people can, smell that from a mile away, right? Whatever that is. So, Jon, wow, I'm sad that this show is ending, but it does have to end. So, again, I just really want to appreciate your time being here and sharing with our listeners your story, your insights, and I know it's really going to touch and impact a lot of people. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Caleb.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
It's time to grab your victory. Find us on the web at redseacapitalgroup.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Red Sea Capital Group.